Final Fantasy XIV just sold out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm...
Double-barrel name, British accent, very well dressed in his videos. But he...
Double-barreled British, very...
You know, I think actually it would have been even better. It would have been way more meta if he had taken the reaction of me reacting to Belliwer saying that about him.
But
yeah, he makes good videos. I like him. It's so full circle. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well-dressed man. And if you've been joining me on my Twitch streams that normally happen after these video premieres,
alright,
you've been playing some Final Fantasy XIV with me. You've been joining me as I adventure through the land of Eorzea, along with every major streamer, to be honest. Bellular's tried it, Asmongold's trying it. Everyone is giving Final Fantasy XIV a go. In fact, so many people are trying Final Fantasy XIV that momentarily the Square Enix store actually sold out.
That is crazy.
It sold out of an MMO RPG. Don't worry, it's not hit the character cap. There are still server spaces left.
They just didn't have pre-generated codes, right?
The recent surge of players was unprecedented. Over the last 2 weeks, Final Fantasy XIV has seen a massive boost in popularity. But it wasn't always smooth sailing for this game. So let's have a look back at its awful beginnings and examine one of the greatest comeback stories in MMO history. Before we begin, consider dropping a like on the video or subscribing to the channel for more MMO stuff. Ring the bell for all the future videos.
And I hope people see this. Like, whenever anybody... Oh, MMOs are dead. Nobody wants to play MMOs. Shut the fuck up. That's not true. Like, everybody wants to fucking play this shit. People love this. They love being cat girls. Like, they love just going home and playing a game and just chilling out. Dude, MMOs, people have just been waiting. Like, if no good MMO came out, like, let's say Final Fantasy XIV never existed. There was only World of Warcraft, and it just got worse and worse and worse over time, it would not matter. Because the moment that a new game like this comes out, the moment that happens, they will immediately swap over and play it. Because people are waiting for something like this. It doesn't matter when it happens.
A massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Twitch. More on this at the end. For now, let's begin. MMORPGs are incredibly expensive and complicated to make, and they are one of the riskiest genres to go into. It is highly likely if you make an MMORPG, you will not see a return on investment.
You're burning your money. You're setting it on fire.
You need hundreds of people, thousands of hours, and millions of pounds. You need skilled developers, skilled designers, level creators, musicians, voiceover artists, network architects, public relations, marketing. Every single person in your team needs to have such an incredibly complex skill set. It's hard to even find a group that could make an MMORPG. Never mind actually make one. If an MMO launches and fails, chances are you're bankrupt because you've just spent tens of thousands of hours and potentially tens of millions of pounds developing a product that you're not going to see a return on investment on. If you spent...
I think that's definitely true, right? Think about, like, the amount of investment that you need to make an MMO happen, get that off the ground, versus, like, an auto-battler or Hearthstone. Think about it. Hearthstone is so fucking cheap, they're making fake versions of cardboard.
Years of your life and millions of pounds developing a game, and it didn't do very well.
Yeah.
What do you do? Well, Final Fantasy XIV knows the answer to this. Because when it first launched, it did not do well. Final Fantasy XIV version 1.0 was not good, releasing in 2010 and shutting down only 2 years later in 2012. It did not sell well, and it did not impress the reviewers, with IGN only giving it 5.5 out of 10, and
I think that's about 5.5 too many.
At 30%. In the first few months, it only sold around 600,000 copies, which sounds a lot, but for an MMO is not that many. Safe to say, Final Fantasy XIV was a flop. Critics called it broken, an incomplete mess, saying it was released long before it was ready. The combat system and the experience was overly grindy, and the crafting and skilling system had convoluted interfaces and were riddled with bugs. It wasn't all bad. The music was top-notch, and the leveling and job system was widely praised in itself, but small elements of brilliance within an overall awful experience can't save a game. Now, critics and players did agree on one general point. Eorzea was not a terrible fictional land. There was potential there. But Final Fantasy XIV version 1.0 definitely wasn't realising that potential. Now, this wasn't just a case of releasing a patch or an update or an expansion pack that would fix things. Because the things that were the problems, the bugs, the menu, the UI, the combat, that was all stuff at the foundation level. That was inherent in the building blocks of the game. That was an engine issue. The only way they would be able to fix the major flaws that Final Fantasy XIV version 1.0 actually had was to scrap absolutely everything, go back to the very foundation level of game creation, and rebuild the whole thing.
See, this is what I want WoW to do. I think WoW has to do this. Because the game is so old that, like, if they want to innovate the game in a real way, they just have to change the engine. They have to update the engine for WoW. There are so many problems that WoW has. I think that's why it's so laggy. Because there's like a million lines of code. Like, imagine, like, this is like my visualization of like why WoW is laggy. Is it like the hole for like the code to go through is this small? And over time, there's just become more and more code. And so there's more and more code trying to fit through the same hole. And the hole needs to be this big, which means they need a new fucking engine.
And that's what they did.
Yeah.
At the 2011 Tokyo Game Show, Square Enix issued an official apology to the fans and the players, saying the Final Fantasy brand had been greatly damaged. Square Enix admitted fault. They openly admitted they could do better, and they asked for forgiveness.
That's crazy.
And to mark this momentous event in-game, the Final Fantasy XIV version 1.0 servers were merged, and in November of 2012, all players were invited to an apocalyptic, world-destroying in-game event, where the in-game lore saw an actual calamity happen, and the real-life servers shut down to match the timings. As bad as this was, this is a fantastic way to see your game off, with an actual in-game apocalyptic calamity ending everything for the developers and the players. With
like,
Blame
imagine how much
admitted
confidence you have to
and
have
Final
to do this.
Fantasy XIV version 1.0 blown up and scrapped, they set about to do what very few companies would ever have the money or the time or the skill to do. They started again from a completely blank slate. They remade the entire game, but so much better. Final Fantasy XIV version 2.0 began to take shape, and they actually decided to include the destruction of version 1 as inspiration for their in-game lore. They added the subtitle A Realm Reborn, and when you start playing Final Fantasy XIV now, you will hear about the calamity, the destruction of the world, and how no one can seem to remember what happened years ago.
Yeah, because they don't want to. Like, that I think is what the coolest thing about it is the fact that they added the fact that they deleted everything in the game. They put that into the story. I find that to be so interesting and so cool.
Square Enix had not only admitted their failures, they had used them to influence the new Reborn game's lore. The calamity was a real event. It did really happen. And there are other references to version 1.0 of the game spread throughout A Realm Reborn. To spend years of your life and millions of pounds making an MMO is one thing. To release it and have negative feedback and negative critical reception, that sucks.
It does.
To then blow up your own game because it's not as good as you could make it, that's pretty ballsy.
It is.
But to then take the actual destruction of your game and rebuild it from the ground up, using that destruction as the new game's lore, that's genius. Square Enix knew they could do better. They knew Final Fantasy XIV could be something magical.
We've got to understand, like, Square Enix isn't just like some random fucking gaming company. Like, as I said, I showed you guys this yesterday. I still have it next to me. Like, this was effectively like Square Enix from back in the day. Secret of Mana. Like, they've been the gold standard for games for like 30 years. So this isn't like some random fucking company that just comes out and does this. This is one of the biggest and most established companies with one of the best track records for good games of all time.
And version 1.0 definitely wasn't it. So when they released version 2.0, they did quite a lot better. Releasing in 2013,
There it
A
is.
Realm Reborn was
There it
critically
is.
praised, gathering multiple 5-star reviews and a 9.5 out of 10 from Forbes, also winning MMO of the Year from Game Informer. It's safe to say the gamble to destroy version 1 and build version 2 paid off. Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn went from strength to strength, releasing major expansion packs, Heaven's Ward...
It's so funny for me to see that fight after doing it on the Ultimate version. It's just so much different.
Stormblood,
extreme
Shadowbringers,
version, whatever.
and coming soon, Endwalker.
Yeah.
And each expansion pack was exceptionally well received, and this leads us to now. With major
Yeah.
streaming personalities like Asmongold trying the game on Twitch and gaining several million views, and major gaming sites reporting on the game's sudden renaissance, it has been met with so many people trying to download it at once right now that the Square Enix site momentarily sold out of digital download codes.
That's
Digital
crazy.
codes are generated to authenticate the game when you
That
launch
is
it
crazy.
and connect it to the servers. The limitation is usually based on how many players the current servers can handle or how many new players they're expecting on a week's basis. To reach that limit with an MMORPG is not completely unheard of, but it's still a very rare occurrence.
It certainly
shows
is.
that player demand for the game is higher than Square Enix were expecting right now, and Square Enix will need to react to that and provide more servers, which
Absolutely.
I assume they're more than happy to do. Final Fantasy
Yeah, they'll definitely do
XIV
that.
is full of redemption arcs. It's a story-driven RPG with an MMO tacked onto the side
Makes
of it.
me mad how
and
many
Square
redemption
Enix
arcs it
went
has.
through their own
I get so pissed
real-life
off.
redemption and improvement arc. They released a game, it sucked. They admitted it sucked, they blew it up, they learned from their mistake, and then they released one of the best MMOs ever made. I think over the next few weeks and months we'll see just how much player retention power Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn really has. And
Yeah, it's
personally,
true.
I'm confident it will not only hold its impressive boost within the MMO world, but it will continue to push this advantage. Final Fantasy...
The reason why that will happen is because it has a social structure inside of the game, and that social structure causes people to continue playing it. The thing is, like, the game's gameplay and everything like that, that hooks you, but what really takes it home is the social structure. Having people that you're gonna play with. And expansion in November, content releases matter, like they do matter, but what keeps people in the game? Content releases causes them to subscribe. What causes them, it's more important in an MMO to have things to prevent people from unsubscribing than to have things that prevent people, that get people to subscribe. And these social experiences keep people from unsubscribing. It's unironically family.
14 knows what it's like to fail. They know what it's like to rebuild, and they know that players nowadays will accept nothing less than the absolute best the team can do. And in case you didn't know, there is a free trial, which contains the entire base game and the first major expansion pack, Heaven's Ward, with no time limit. And PlayStation, PC, and Mac players all play together. The boost in players Final Fantasy XIV has seen over the last few weeks has been
That's another thing, dude. I don't know why WoW has like dragged its heels so much on making it console compatible. I think that they fucked themselves over by not making it console compatible. I would love if WoW was console compatible. That would make the game so much better. It would give it would create so many more people that you could play with. No? Explain why Final Fantasy can be console compatible, but WoW can't. Please, explain that to me. Like, I don't understand. Add-ons? Oh, great. Let's necessitate the use of things that make the game worse. Most add-ons make the game worse.
Unprecedented, and I hope it continues. I've been having an absolute blast playing on the Omega server. If you're around, feel free to add me or drop me a message and say hi. It's lovely to talk to people, and I'm loving doing all the raids and dungeons with you guys on stream. But I want to know about your experiences with this game. Were you around before the calamity
Omega
happened?
server, yeah.
Did you join when A Realm Reborn first released, or have you joined this surge of players and you're experiencing Eorzea for the first time? Let me know in the comments below, and hopefully I'll see you in game sometime. Cheers for watching. Another massive thank you to the supporters on Patreon and Twitch who keep the channel going.
Look at
You can
that.
support
What a
from only
nice
£1 a month.
what a nice
Check
thing
the
to
video
say,
description
dude.
for links to the Patreon, Twitch, Twitter,
What a
and
nice
Discord.
thing to
And as
say.
always, have a great day.
That's great. That's a good video. I like that video. Let me go back over here. I'm gonna read these real quick, and then I want to probably just get into the game, dude. Not sub. All right. I'll sub to him. I hardly ever sub to anybody on my channel, but like I'll do it. So popular, I ran out of digital versions to sell. It's gotta be some massive bragging rights from now on. I would say so, absolutely. Whenever I first heard about how they had a canonical end to the MMO included in the story, I was initially interested. Yeah, I think a lot of people would be. I think it's great.